Number 5, Pushkin Interrogation, The Living Daylights. Now, you're probably asking yourself why I'm including it on this list, and that's for two reasons. One, there's not that many Timothy Dalton fights if you really think about it. And two, this scene's really cool because it looks a lot into every single character that involves. The fight isn't really as much as a fight as more as a great scene. That's why it's here. Number 4, Sanchez License to Kill. This one's a really cool chase, and I've talked about it many times in the past, but the reason I like it is because at different points in these various scenes of them trucking away, they do fight each other a lot, whether it be with a knife or just all out, blowing it out, if you will. It's a really cool scene, and there's a lot happening. I know it's more of a chase than an actual fight, but because of the amount of things that happen, it deserves to be on this list. Number 3, Whitaker, The Living Daylights. The reason I really like this one is because it's the only fight in the Timothy Dalton era that uses any sort of gadgets, but it's not in a campy sense. He uses that little whistle thing that sets off a gas, and the reason I like that so much, and I've talked about it as one of my favorite gadgets of the series, is because it's a really cool invention. This guy, Whitaker, is so dependent on these gadgets to kill people, and the fact that Bond's able to kill him with his own gadget is something that I really like, and it's a little twist to the story, which is why it's so good. Number 2, pre-title sequence of The Living Daylights. I've talked about this one as my favorite overall scenes of any Timothy Dalton film, and it's so cool and fun. I love how it shoves you right into the action. It reminds me a lot of the Die Another Day opening. It's just better in my opinion. It's a simple concept that they do really well of just these two just brawling it out the entire time while he's trying to pick off agents, but good old 007, screws them up. It's just a really cool idea and a really great showcase of some stunts, and it's just really fun. You know what I find funny? All the shrapnel hits his face and he doesn't die. Number 1, Necros, I don't care, The Living Daylights. This is one of my favorite fights in the series. It's just so cool in so many ways. I love how they actually had the stuntmen hang out at the back of this plane. My favorite part is how well it matches up with the close-ups of the two fighting. It's obviously not them on the back of the plane, but the fact that they're able to match up the action so well with what's zoomed in is what makes this fight truly special, and without a doubt the best fight of the Timothy Dalton series, and one of the best fights in the entire Bond series in my opinion. Speaking of Die Another Day, number 5, Die Another Day pre-title sequence. This one is really cool and probably my favorite pre-title sequence of the Brosnan era action-wise, because there's just so much happening here and it's so over the top and it's fantastic. I don't know anyone who really doesn't like this pre-title sequence, and in my opinion it's one of the best scenes of the film. I think this and another scene which we'll talk about in a little bit are the only really good scenes in the movie, and that's why I like it so much. Number 4, Bond versus Renard, The World Is Not Enough. This is a really cool fight, and I've talked about it before, but the reason I like it is because up to this point, you see Renard as this invincible character who doesn't get hurt by anything, which they kind of break completely in this fight. Like, he's down for a solid minute. It's ridiculous, but the fight is really cool between the two because you have this overpowered villain versus really skilled agent. It's just cool to see the two tactically wise try to fight, and how Bond eventually kills him in the cheapest way possible, in my opinion. I love it.
She's waiting for you.
Number 3, the sword fight, Die Another Day. This is the best scene in the movie without a doubt. I think everyone can agree on it. It's just such cool action the entire way. They're going balls to the walls, and it's there for no reason. That's why I love it. It kind of describes the movie as a whole. The fact that a scene that shouldn't even be there is the best scene in the movie, but it's some really cool action, and then I love how they're just completely brawling it out and no one's stopping it. They're just going at it. It's absolutely fantastic. Number 2, the stealth boat raid from Tomorrow Never Dies. This is one of the cooler scenes in the movie because of just how they're going balls to the wall the entire time. So much happens. This is just one little snippet of like the 8 fights that happens on the boat, and it's just so cool. You have such a array of action. You have, a Goldfinger-esque ending where he's killed by his own machine. Goldfinger dies by his golden gun. In this, he dies by like the grinder almost. This guy is just unstoppable. He's like your odd job character. It's just a really cool fight all the way through, and they blow up the entire place. It's awesome. I don't know how you couldn't love it. And before we get into our top pick, let's take a look at a few honorable mentions.
You can't win.
Put it down. The end of our
Put it down, General!
Do you even know who the enemy is, Dimitri?
Do you?
Number 1, James Bond 007 versus Alec Trevelyan 006 Goldeneye. You guys knew this was going to win this one. This is one of my favorite fights in the entire series, and I believe it came second or first, actually, in my top 10 Bond fights of all time. It's really between this, Red Grand, Odd Job for me is my favorite fights in the series. I just think there's so much to love about this. There's so much great action that happens all the way through. I don't know how you couldn't enjoy it. There's so much to watch, and there's so much for everyone. It's just it's a great fight because of just how long and drawn out and just how well they edit everything. It's just a perfect fight. Number 5, Sword Fight from Casino Royale. Yep, you guys knew it was going to be on this list. It was in my top 10 Bond fights of all time, but now that I've really dived into each individual Bond, I realize there's some great fights from the Daniel Craig era, so it's only number 5, and I know it's a great fight, but there's others that I got to include. But this really is a really fun, it's fast editing, it's really just high pace and high action the entire time. It's great. Number 4, the Bell Tower from Quantum of Solace. This is the one fight I completely forgot about whenever I was making anything to do with fight lists, because I kind of forget this movie exists sometimes, and I know that's kind of mean. Yes, the opening's really cool, but that's more of a chase, and that's why it's not going to be included in this segment. But this is a really cool fight and really well done. It's really well choreographed, and although the editing is a bit sharp for my personal taste, I think it's a really cool fight overall, and I really like what they're doing with this opening, and I just think it's a really cool fight and showcases a lot of different techniques of shooting, and it's kind of artsy, but overall it's just a really cool, solid fight. Number 3, the Collapsing House Casino Royale. As the ending of one of the best Bond movies, at least in most people's opinions, including mine. I think this is a really cool fight, and I love how in the middle, you have the Eva Green character just stuck in an elevator shaft, so all the shit's going down. At the same time, she's in danger, and I love how they add that element, as well as the briefcase full of money just being in the house with this collapsing house. There's just so much going on that you can't help but be entertained. Number 2, the pre-title sequence of Skyfall. This is, I think, one of the best train fights in any movie ever. There's just so much happening. There's so much at stake. I love it. I love how they just go off with a bang in this movie. They don't, try to fiddle their way through anything. No, just right from the start, a guy's dead. It's just fantastic. This entire opening scene, so much happens, and it's just fantastic. It's so well done. There's so much going, and I love how they have Bond die at the beginning. It's just so cool. And before we get into our top pick, let's have a few honorable mentions.
The second is... Yes. Considerably.
Number 1, the defensive end and Skyfall. This is a really cool ending to one of my favorite Bond movies because there's just so much badassery in the entire thing. I love how they have the whole gimmick of him walking away from an explosion, just not even looking at it. There's so much cool stuff happening. You know what the scene feels like, and I'm not complaining, I'm just saying. It's like they took 15 minutes of footage and like, here, you take it, and we just have to soak it all in at once like a big sponge, and I love it. I think it's awesome. I think there's so much cool stuff that happens. I love when they just murder the car and you see Bond just physically pissed off, and it's like the best thing ever. I don't know how you couldn't love it. I don't get people who don't like this movie, because if for one thing, you got this scene, and that's why it's so good. So yeah, that's what I think of the Dalton, Brosnan, and Craig era. I'll see you guys next time for part 3 of this video, when I make a collective list of top 10 Bond fights of all time. I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.